Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In this podcast, we will interview women who have been successful within athletics and beyond. We hope that the amazing women in these interviews encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative in the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. We hope you enjoy our conversations and join us in understanding women's health today to ensure women's health tomorrow. On today's podcast, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Mary Lloyd Ireland. Dr. Ireland is a professor in the Department of Orthopedic Surgery and Sports Medicine at the University of Kentucky and co-director of the Active Women's Health Initiative. She is a renowned researcher in ACL injury, reconstruction, and the female athlete. Additionally, Dr. Ireland began her athletic career at a young age and competed at the national, world, and Olympic levels in swimming. I'm here with Dr. Mary Lloyd Ireland, and we're going to have a conversation today about her previous sport experiences and how it brought her to where she is today.
It's great to be here with you today, and I'm happy to talk about how sports helped me where I am today.
So just to get us started, could you begin telling me by how you got into your sport and your early sport experiences?
So I ended up being a swimmer, but I was really into all sports. Back in the 50s, I am now 66, so I'm a pre-Title IX individual, but back in the day we had trees and we climbed trees, and I like to be active and I like to run around, and my poor mother had to call me at dusk every night to try to get me to come in to eat dinner, so that's a little different than now. But so I enjoyed being just a very active child, and that really channeled, I think, my energies into being into sports. And as a swimmer, I tried out for the country club team one summer. I think I was 9 then, and I didn't make the team because I was too bad. So that challenged me to go to higher levels, and kept on trying to learn to swim better. And at age 10, I was a better swimmer, made the summer team, and I begged my parents to let me swim year-round, which they reluctantly did because they were both working and they weren't sure if they could get me to all the practices and get me to all the meets. But we worked out a deal with Win Paul, who was my coach, where Mother's big Chrysler was what we took to meets on the weekends, and then she got a Carmen Ghia, which she could drive very not well because it was a stick shift, but she looked pretty cool in her little Carmen Ghia VW.
All right. So could you talk a little bit about your parents' role in those early sport experiences? Did they introduce you to swimming? How did swimming become
Yeah, so swimming, I enjoyed a lot of sports, but I particularly enjoyed swimming. And my mother was probably a little more reluctant than my father, but my father encouraged me to do anything I wanted to do, whether it was swimming, whether it was athletics. It was always, I guess, given, and I was driven to do well in academics, so that made it easier where I didn't have to be bribed or any deals made to make certain grades. So I was always a pretty good student. But Daddy would always say, and I didn't necessarily pit mother versus Daddy. I would ask him last maybe, but he would always encourage me to do everything, and Mother was kind of like, well, I'm not sure. Do you really want to do that? And I said, yes, I do. So.
Right. So you mentioned academics in there as well. Can you talk a little bit about how sports either impacted, in any ways that it impacted your academics, either positively or negatively?
Well, I found with the organization that sports makes you do that I was actually a better student when I was swimming in season. Like if we had off-season type activities, I wasn't as structured or diligent getting my homework done at a certain time. So I think that athletics, whether it's swimming or I also did field hockey and basketball, it really made you get your homework done, and then you could do the swimming. And at that time during the year we would swim only at night, so we wouldn't swim during 2-a-days as we oftentimes do now.
And then what about later in your career, either college or medical school? Did Do you think that sports played a role in any of those experiences?
I think, again, sports was made me very structured in my studying, and when you're in college, you have a lot of distractions. That was when I was at Memphis State, now the University of Memphis, and I continued to swim into college, and I think that really made me a better student, making better grades because I knew what I had to do, and it kept me focused. You swam like 5 hours a day, and you got all your work done, and you did well in school, and then you were able to make good grades, and I was able to go to medical school, and actually swam into medical school because I was kind of a late bloomer to start. So I started at age 12, and I guess I got through at age 24 with swimming. So I think you have a certain number of years that you end up being a highly competitive swimmer.
Mm-hmm. In what ways do you think being a swimmer, an athlete, or being active your whole life impacted your career?
I think even though this is an individual sport, when you look at orthopedic surgeons or ask them, particularly the females, because we're only 14% of male, the percentage of orthopedics, 86% are males and 14% are females. I think it allowed me to understand that I could compete with the best of them, and as long as I did the work, like in swimming, put in the mileage, or in orthopedics, if I did my job and perhaps did it a little better than the guys, I would be accepted, and I didn't really have any thoughts that I wouldn't make it.
Mm-hmm. And so now, as we come to more current day, how does you, and as you transitioned out of sport and athletics and into just lifetime activity and thinking about your health, how do you think those early experiences impact your choices about health and or physical activity?
I enjoy being active, hiking, working out, doing balance training, core, and I do have to have a structure where I have a personal trainer that makes sure I work out in a routine way a couple of times a week. So I think that kind of goes back to the swimming structure of you get in the pool and you're going to do it. And I really haven't. I did masters for a little bit, but in my professional career, since I've been in Lexington since the mid-'80s, I really haven't done competitive swimming. And I think when you're whatever competitive athlete you are, you kind of have a little problem going back to that sport unless you're going to be in a situation where you want to compete. So it's like you have to have a goal, and you're driven to swim faster or compete in meets. So I really haven't done swimming, but I have done other things like cycling and hiking and basically just working out. So I'm hopeful to get back into swimming as I start doing less work.
So this is kind of a switch in gears, but as part of the Active Women's Health Initiative, we want to make sure that the physical activity experiences that girls have are injury-free and healthy, or if they do sustain an injury, that they are well taken care of, well treated. Did you ever sustain an injury yourself while you were being an athlete or athlete?
Yeah, actually I did, and I think that was another reason I went into orthopedics. I had a back condition called spondylolisthesis, which means that you have one vertebral body that slips forward on the other. It's more of a developmental type thing, not necessarily related specifically to sports, but people with that condition can swim. But this was diagnosed when I was 15, and I was doing swimming and running track and playing basketball and field hockey, and so it became obvious to me that I had to have something done because I had so much back pain I really couldn't comfortably walk or run, and so the consultants that we had, the pediatrician just said, well, why don't you just quit doing sports? And that was not an acceptable answer to me even at age 15, and so I stopped doing sports for a little while, and then ended up having to have a back fusion, which was very successful, and I had to take a year off of swimming, but I got back and was able to swim. I'm not able to do certain things, but you adapt and live within what your body allows you to do. And then in college, when I was swimming, probably from a high jump injury, I had a shoulder problem and had a acromioclavicular sublux or dislocation, which is called a separated shoulder, and had surgery on that. So I got to know some orthopedists that took care of me, and I figured out that I was a pretty easy person to take care of. I was well motivated and would usually do what they told me to do, and so that allowed me to get in a mindset that if I can make people better with or without surgery, but if they have an injury, diagnose what that problem is and give them a game plan, almost like a sports-specific plan of when you're tapering or when you're getting ready for a meet, you got to know, what mileage to do and what to swim. Well, in an injury game plan, you have to do that same thing. You have to say, okay, you're not going to do this sport for X number of weeks or months, and give them a game plan, and they'll obey it and hopefully come back injury-free, whether it's post-op or just after an injury that doesn't need surgery.
So do you think some of those injury experiences yourself maybe led to your career choices?
Yeah, I really think so. The orthopedists that took care of me were actually personal friends of my family, and I knew them both socially and as a doctor-patient relationship, and it really drove me to become an orthopedic surgeon. I went to the University of Tennessee Center for the Health Sciences in Memphis, Tennessee, and my counselor, or the person at UT, was a pediatrician. And when I finished medical school, the counsel was to go do pediatrics, which I did for a couple of weeks as an intern, and figured out I just couldn't do that, and I really wanted to follow my passion of being an orthopedic surgeon. So I did that and trained in Southern California, so I got to live in Southern California, which is a dream of a swimmer living in Southeast. So I do think that my experience as a patient and as an athlete allowed me to know that was what I wanted to do as a career, become an orthopedic surgeon and specifically do sports medicine. And I think when we have that experience ourselves, we are more compassionate and have empathy for how important an athlete injury is to them. I mean, that's kind of their life as a teenager, where that's your social structure, and we need to pay particular attention to them and their injuries and what other problems they may have when they're going through that injury program, whether it's weeks or months or even up to a year if you tear your ligament in your knee.
So we talked about all of your experiences over the course of your lifetime that are connected to swimming and athletics. How would your life have been different if you had not had those early physical activity and sport experiences?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just think I would not have been as competitive in the career arena. I think girls and boys are different, where if certain challenges happen to girls, maybe they take another path. And fortunately, I got into medical school right away. I also had some other backups where I was interested in being a marine biologist or medical technician, and I kind of blew through the medical school entrance door, so I didn't have to make any of those choices. But if I didn't have the drive from being a competitive athlete, I think I might have been maybe more passive and not as confident in what I was doing. And I think I still would have had a good life, but it certainly wouldn't have been the career that I feel that I have been able to develop and give so much back to the community, and both boys and girls who got injured, and older athletes and athletic individuals who want to stay mobile and stay in good shape.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it changed the trajectory for the better.
Sure, right. It changed. I think it changed just my personality, where I could make an impact and do the things that really brought passion to my career, as opposed to making it a 9-to-5 job.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine that along all of those experiences that you've had across the course of your lifetime, that you have had the opportunity to travel. What was your favorite place to go?
Well, I've had the blessing to travel so many places, and usually it's with athletic teams or with meetings. But I do try to put a little positive spin and do a little recreational sightseeing with it. I guess Africa is my favorite place to travel. I did that a couple of times without a reason, only fun, and then 2 times with medical meetings, not missions. I would like to do a medical mission in Africa, but I think just seeing the people of Africa and all of the animals. It gives you a circle of life, why certain things happen that we can't really make sense of sometime, and just be able to be out with in a safari vehicle and see what happens in nature, where lions are going to eat things to stay alive, and there's a lot of different chain of the circle of life, and it puts a lot into perspective. So I would say Africa is the place that kind of puts my whole life into a good perspective of why things happen.
Mm-hmm. And so for our final question, what advice would you give to girls and women about playing sports or being active?
The advice I would give them is you can do it. You have to think you can do it. Sometimes you have to figure out ways that it works for you. I was blessed to have a family structure of supportive parents that tried to tell me, no, you can't do that. But I said, well, I think I can. So that's when I went and asked Daddy, yeah, you can do that. Like my mother didn't really want me to go to medical school. She thought that might be a little stressful and hard. And I said, I think I can do it. So she didn't dissuade me, but Daddy said, yeah, go do it. So I would encourage you to follow your dreams, and it might be a challenge, but if that's what you really want to do in a career, be passionate. My high school motto in the yearbook was, in order to hit the mark, one must aim a little above it. And it's funny, one of my best friends, who is still one of my best friends, was the editor of The Pillars, is what the Sayre School yearbook was. And I didn't quite understand why she picked that for me, but now I do, because I think I just aim a little higher, and you can do it if you have the passion to do it. And again, you just have to believe in yourself, and make sure you follow your career, your goals for a career that'll make you passionate. And if you get in a career you don't like, back up and say, what do I want to do?
Great advice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today.
It was a pleasure.